Hello and welcome to the Apple, iPhone, iOS voiceover compatible games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Now, Apple, iPhone, iOS voiceover compatible games is a group that is dedicated to accessible gaming, but tonight we're going to do an interview that kind of expands past our normal platform, and we're going to speak to someone who's had quite a bit of success as an accessible gamer. We're going to talk to TJ, the blind gamer. TJ, welcome.
Hello.
Now, TJ, you've had a little bit of fame about 3 years ago. You had a whole bunch of articles written about you all around the world, talking about you being the first blind gamer to reach 10,000 kills on Call of Duty on the PlayStation. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you worked your way up to such an amazing achievement.
Well, a little bit of myself. The short version of it is I have always been a gamer, like ever since I was about, I think, 2 or 3 years old. Back then I had vision to the point where I could, see screens and, walk around without a cane. Like I had relatively decent vision. But things started going downhill when I was 5, retinal detachment in my left eye, and then same process for my right eye when I was a little bit later. But that didn't stop me from wanting to game. So from the age of 2 until about 15, I played everything from, Nintendo to, console exclusive games to whatever you can think of. Like from one side of the spectrum, like Call of Duty, to, I don't know, Dragon Age Origins, like all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I was 15, when I lost my vision completely, I thought I couldn't ever play again. And rather than sit there and think that I can't do that, I decided I'm just going to jump back in and try it. And the first game that I tried to play, instead of the typical blind person plays a fighting game or an audio game, this, that, I jumped straight into Call of Duty. And, because that was the franchise I grew up with from the time I was 8 years old when I first introduced to COD. And, going blind didn't have me stop playing that game. So jumped into Black Ops 3. The funny thing is that game is probably one of the hardest for a blind person to comprehend because it's a full 3D movement based system. So like you're jumping through the air, like it's not just like a move forward, move back. It's like you have like verticality,
right,
horizontal movement, like the whole 9 yards for multiplayer wise. And then zombies was a lot easier, but the difference was the sound design. Sound design was a big deal, actually. So I learned Black Ops 3. I met a couple friends. I decided, I'm gonna try to record myself playing on account of at the time, nobody, to my knowledge, did anything with Call of Duty. I heard about some blind people playing fighting games like Rattlehead for NetherRealm, so Mortal Kombat 9. Blind Warriors Ven, I think that's how you pronounce his name, for Street Fighter. Like that was it. Like I know 2 dudes who were blind gamers, like a little more mainstream, that they put themselves out there type of deal.
And those are, it's such a leap. I mean, for those games, it's very contained. You're not being able to go anywhere in a 3D space, up, down, left, right. I mean, you're basically squaring off against a component to your left or your right, and you can listen for their sounds of their punches or their movements, and it's almost like I hear people say it's like a rhythm game almost, that kind of fighting game experience. But why I was really excited to talk to you was the concept of being able to navigate in a completely open space. I'm really fascinated of how you were able to achieve that. I know you said there's some of the sound design, but I mean, how did you learn where the sounds were, considering there's people around you shooting at you and killing you, and you might not get 5 steps before you're shot and you're respawn to some other location or whatever the case may be? Like, how did you take in the space? Were you able to kind of operate it with no enemies so that you could kind of get a feel of the sound layout of a game like Call of Duty?
So to answer that there's a couple of ways to think about that. One, there are private matches, so you can go into any given map or mode
Mhm.
and like free roam and like just walk around and get a feel for the map.
Okay.
Multiplayer wise,
Right.
zombies is different because zombies you always have zombies on the map. Like there's no like turning zombies off and learn the map. It's like you got to learn in the middle of it, which generally is fine with zombies because they're a lot slower, but and different topic. Multiplayer generally for me it was I didn't bother with like learning every inch of the map because there was like for Black Ops 3, World War 2, like all these different CODs, they hover between like what is it like between like 9 and 20 something maps throughout the DLC cycles and everything.
Mhm.
So it eventually gets to the point where if I wanted to memorize every single map, I theoretically could, but it's more convenient to just go with the flow and understand just the basics of how spawn logic works in COD. So like with Nuketown, for example, which is like it's a classic Black Ops franchise map, right? So this sub group of Black Ops games in the Call of Duty franchise. That was first introduced in 2010 with the first Black Ops, and it's been in I think every Treyarch game since then. Um, I'm actually let me think. Yeah, one, two, three. Yeah, every game, and that map is pretty small and has a asymmetrical layout, so it's pretty easy to memorize. Excuse me, sorry. Other maps are not asymmetrical and they have more complex maneuverability. Like, for example, there's a map called Express from Black Ops 2 where you have to worry about a train randomly coming through the map and like running people over. But on top of that, you have to worry about um, like verticality because like there's like little I don't want to say alcoves, but like little like tunnels, I suppose, that you can go above where the train tracks are.
Mhm.
So then, like, if you like miss it or whatever, then next thing you know, you're falling on the tracks. Yeah, that kind of idea. Which, when it came to that, like I said, a lot of it was primarily focused on let me just understand the spawn logic. Okay, here's my team. My team are spawning with me because the spawn logic dictates the opponents won't spawn near me or us. Like if there's like one or two or whatever, however many people on which side of the map. So I'm like, okay, well, we're here. They're on the other side, pretty much most of the time. And that also went down to um, even if I died continuously, which I did, obviously, I'm not going to go crazy positive in terms of like stats here, but in terms of like navigation, I used teammates' footsteps and gunshots to understand. Okay, this person running to my left is running a MP5 with a silencer. Okay, that's if I keep hearing that gun shoot, that's probably my teammate. If I hear this person use this other gun, that's probably an enemy. Like I started using the guns and like the movement of people to identify who's on my team, who's on an
So
enemy.
you just keep trying to follow that sound to move, along with them wherever they're moving.
Yeah, generally, and that was before they started doing more accessibility and more like sound design changes. Because that's the big thing when it comes to an open world. No, not really open world. It's not like Skyrim, for example, but it is more open, like for like at least as far as a blind person is concerned. Um, this is I'm discussing as in like Black Ops 3 and World War 2, um, where they didn't have sound effects for objective, like finding the objective, and like all these other like little things they started adding through the years. Um, like in Black Ops 3, if you found a flag point to capture in one of the modes, the only indication you would have that you're capturing it would be a announcer saying capturing C or capturing A.
All right. Yeah.
Versus a couple years down the road, I noticed in Modern Warfare from 2019, and this happened in Cold War as well. I don't know about Vanguard, but I know for Cold War for sure. They added a sound so that the announcer said it. So like the overall announcer who calls out, enemy capturing this, you know, teammate called in this streak, and like they just give you feedback.
Right.
So the announcer says it, your character says it. Your character will tell you, "Hey, I'm capturing C. Someone come help me." Like talking to the other, teammates basically in game
Right.
if they don't have a mic, for example. And then you also have a sound indicator as the capture indicator goes up, and you know when you're done. So there's three audio feedback things that they added eventually, And I don't know if that was necessarily like a choice they made on their own, or because of feedback from myself and whoever else like did reach out and try to. Because I'm so sorry, I'm a little tired.
It's all right. Yeah, yeah. You were telling me you had a long work day, so I understand.
Yeah. So it came down to, following teammates when I could. If I was playing like free fall, for example, what I did there was I started messing with people with vision. Like I would intentionally, fire off a weapon that didn't have a suppressor, so that they would see the red dot on the map, come chase the red dot, because people people are predictable, honestly. So have them chase the dot and wait for them to come, come toward me, and then I followed their footstep until they're close enough to I'm like, okay, I got a clean shot, boom, take them down. And it evolved from there to where we got coordinated enough, and I got people interested enough to where I got one other blind dude really interested in Cold War, and I got a couple others interested in like trying it, but like nobody really like committed, which I don't blame them, because it's not easy like playing a shooter like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
There are a couple guys right now who can run like Gears of War or Resident Evil, but those are third person, or Last of Us Part 2. That's third person as well. Like first person and third person, it doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it really it adds up, especially when you're trying to take into consideration the way audio is portrayed in different mediums or perspectives. So then it results in like the difference between first person and third person is drastic, and like some people
Is it
they I've
drastic
heard
in the orientation of the sound? So a first person's going to have a truer sound location to where you really need to, be aiming or hearing the enemy than maybe a third person.
yeah like yeah like it's if you think about it, right? So the way, again, I'm not a dev, so this is all conjectural and like what I'm like the best I can describe it. So if you have a third person perspective, the camera is like a little bit behind the shoulder of your
Mhm.
character or whatever,
Okay.
or maybe even like fully behind the character, depends on what game you're talking about. The audio of your character will be slightly in front of you. Again, this one depends greatly on the sound design of the game, but generally, it's, from my knowledge, has been like either a little bit in front of you for your own footsteps, so like it sounds like you're in front of yourself, a tiny bit, or it'll be tied to you, which is fine. But then like the audio around your character, at least in my experience, I've had more trouble with third person, like aiming and like moving around, than first person, because first person, like you mentioned, it's more like it's easier to determine direction and like distance and things like that a lot smoother. Because like in a first person perspective, it's like a lot snappier as well. Like when I turn to the right, it's like immediately I notice, okay, I can hear it
Sounds
like,
change.
yeah, I can hear it like shift to the left, so I know whatever's to my right is now in front of me. Whereas like the third person thing, it's you're more moving the camera than your actual aim. So then it like it's like a weird dynamic.
So,
Like
this sound design, the developer sound design, I mean, you're looking for a game that is not been lazy with their sound design, where, as you said, every gun sounds different so that you can gain information from that. If every gun sounded exactly the same, that would suddenly make it harder for you to play that game.
oh yeah, it make it trickier. But the thing is, like, even when gun profiles generally have a similar profile, there's still little subtle nuances that you can pay attention for. So
Like
if we're
the
if we're
echoes off the wall, like you're using that for orientation too, right? If you fire a gun and it sounds different because you're in an open field versus next to a building, that again,
yeah,
they
partially,
they have to kind of give you that sound information for you to be
yeah,
able to
partially.
do that.
That's one of those things where you don't notice it until you do, and then when you notice it, it's like that's a nice detail. But it's also one of those things where like doesn't really impact the gameplay all that much. It's hit or miss. I noticed actually in Black Ops 4, Treyarch did a thing where your bullet, like if you shot a pistol or something, you would hear the echo kind of reverberate down the hall. So
Like
like you kind of got an idea of like which way the other end of the hall was,
right.
which was cool, and it was like really helpful to know that was a thing. but generally I just went more off like muscle memory than actually listening for like a hallway, if that makes sense. Like it was more like, okay, I know like the end of the hall is like in 10 steps, so I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and waste ammo, give away my position or whatever to listen for the hall. It's more like, let me just do my muscle memory and count my steps, and then I'll be at the end of the hall anyway. So it is nice. It's a nice detail to have when you have crazy design or like really good design, but at the same time, it's also the idea of the practicality of some of these choices. So like you gotta understand like what's beneficial for you. Like for me, it's not a big deal because I've been like I grew up on shooters. So like for me, a lot of this wasn't that hard. But like a lot of other blind people I've tried training or teaching over the years, it's been like chaos for them, which I don't blame them.
No,
I can.
I have listened to a video of you playing, and again, from my standpoint, I'm listening to YouTube on my phone, and it just sounded like chaos to me. Well, actually, on my phone, but with a headset on my
Yeah.
head, a wireless headset, and I could not tell one thing that was going on. Um, does the headset that you're using also make a big difference? Like if you were listening to what I was listening, would that be chaos for you as well? And you wouldn't really understand. You really need to have a good crisp headset to to make that information come through.
Yeah, that is having a good headset definitely helps. Generally, um, I'm getting sidetracked 'cause I'm like trying to think of three things at once here. The other thing you have to consider as well is YouTube does downgrade video at quality, so if like
Mhm.
audio and visuals. So there's that. But as far as raw sound design from like playing these games, yeah, like having a decent headset is always going to be better than nothing. Like I knew a blind dude who tried playing just off a soundbar, and I'm just like, dude, um, I understand what you're trying to do here, but I really think you should look at putting some money down on a headset. Like even a like a $80 one, like that's not extremely crazy as far as price goes, but it'll be better than soundbar that
Yeah,
doesn't like give you a full 360-degree
right.
rotation
And the
figure.
orientation's all messed up because it's all in front of you at 5 feet
Yeah,
away or whatever the case may be.
yeah, and it's like, I mean, and the thing is as well is the headset just conveys things better in general. So like, yes, for shooters, it's like awesome. That's great. But also for fighting games, like 2D fighting games, I haven't tried a 3D fighting game in a while, so I couldn't talk to that. Um, but like 2D fighting games, shooters, both sound really good. You can determine direction and distance. That's great. Then it also works pretty well for like Diablo, which is the other game that I'm trying to play a lot more as well. So like Diablo 3, like I was showing a newer blind dude the other day actually, and I was like trying to explain to him some Diablo basics just to get him like involved.
Mhm.
And the first thing he noticed was like, wow, I can actually hear everything to my left or right. And that, excuse me, sorry. And it was interesting because trying to teach other blind people all these different games can definitely be fun, but also can have its own stresses. Just because like I'm used to it, right? Like I've been doing this. It's not a huge thing to me. Like in my brain, it's like I don't feel like it's anything fancy, right?
Right.
Like for
And
me, it's
and
just
and well, like in Diablo 3, if I'm remembering, because so I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but like so I only lost my sight 3 years ago. So I have 40 years of gaming underneath me as a sighted person. So I played Diablo 3, and as I remember that game, that's not a first person shooter. It's not even like a uh, from a
right.
third person perspective. It's almost kind of like an angled from top down
Yeah, it's
looking at it. That's kind of a really unique thing. So it'd be interesting how the sound design plays on that, because it's not really in a first person world. It's kind of in a top down world almost. You're looking
uh,
kind of down on the character.
yeah, it's sort of like the words I've heard it described as were like a top down asymmetrical like dungeon crawler. Like I've heard those buzzwords thrown around, which are technically accurate. The best way I can describe the sound is this: you can on at least on console. I don't know about PC because PC's movement is different,
Mhm.
but on console, I can hear when I'm moving to the left or right, so therefore facing left or right, as well as I can identify every direction an enemy is coming at me from. The only time it can be tricky is if they're above or below me, because audio channels don't convey above or below all that well,
Right.
especially for a 10-year-old game. That game's 10 years old and it still sounds this amazing. Like, that's crazy to me. The I think, sorry, I'm trying to remember Diablo right now. Yeah, the left and right, that is pretty easily conveyed. The other thing that's pretty interesting about it as well, is that a lot of the enemy types actually are unique in terms of sound profiles. Like, they're actually different, to where if I really wanted to, I could theoretically memorize the sound of every elite or champion type in the game and call out which one it is, like which special this is. And that also translates to um, teammates and whatever class I'm playing, like barbarian, crusader, demon hunter, or whatever. You can memorize the skills they can throw out, so you can hear the, I don't know, say bash with the barbarian, but then you can tell when they're using a rune, like the frostbite rune for the barbarian bash, the first skill, and because the sound actually changes, and that
That,
also translates to, what damage type your friend or you are dealing when the enemies die, because you hear the lightning or the fire or whatever. So you can identify what you are running based on the sounds of your hits. You can hear every time you hit something. You can hear, like Diablo 3 is like one of the best sound engines I've heard, like in terms of just raw gaming in general. And like I
no,
mentioned, like being a 10-year-old game, that
with
game
with
sounds
with
really
that
good.
game with Diablo 3 and with Call of Duty, I mean, it's a chaotic game. I mean, there's a lot of enemies coming at you from a lot of different directions. There's a lot of people throwing, their different actions or ruins or jars of spiders or whatever the case may be. There's lots of going on. Have you just gotten really good at parsing out the sounds so that you can hear what you want to hear among that chaos?
Yeah, pretty much. I actually started doing that with COD. So when I first jumped back into it with Black Ops 3, I had to get good at identifying like different sounds and like kind of filtering it, so that I was focusing on what I wanted to listen for. Right. So it was like, eventually it was the background of the map was literally in the background. I wasn't even paying attention to it. That was nothing. What I'm focusing on is, all I need to hear is one footstep. All I need is one, and then I can start maybe tracking you through the wall or something. And I started doing that with COD, and then it got to the point where I did what I did with Call of Duty World War II, and then I did the same thing with Diablo when I really started to get into the game and like party up with other players and like play end game content and builds and leaderboards and start trying to push the leaderboard system. So like the greater rifts and seasons.
Mhm.
Um, it got to the point where I ended up being able to identify what everyone was doing, but simultaneously not losing track of any enemies or what we're trying to focus on or do. Right. So right now, as of tomorrow, actually, the new season for Diablo starts, and we already have a baseline plan for what we're going to do. Right. So we do the season start and we get the challenge bags and we do whatever. But I know what we're all running. Well, at least not what I'm running. My friends haven't decided exactly on what they're running yet, but I can give them ideas of what we're doing. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just based on what they have available at that level, and I'm like, hey, if you run this skill, it'll hit this many enemies and this much damage. Blah 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 blah. Like, they just, and then like even if oh, sorry, I was stretching my back, and this translates as well to fighting games, right? Because one thing that a lot of blind people, at least the majority of the BFGC, struggle with, or at least don't enjoy doing, is mirror matches, where it's like Scorpion versus Scorpion, or I don't know, Zangief versus Zangief, right? If you're looking at Street Fighter,
Right.
then it's like mirror matches are annoying because you lose track of who's who. And for me, like, mirror matches are nothing. Like, as long as I know what side I start the match on, I can always keep track of myself. Like I don't know if it's like me being me or if it's just because I practiced it a lot, which I guess that's still being me. But either way, it's like I just got good at memorizing and isolating what I wanted to hear and focusing on that entirely through almost any game I play.
Now, I mean, those games that you've mentioned, you've had some good success in playing those games, and you kind of made a comment before about giving feedback to these companies about their accessibility. Has that been in kind of a informal way, or have you established a more formal relationship with them to give them feedback as someone who's been really successful in utilizing the accessibility content that they're putting out?
So it's a bit of a hit and miss with like formal and informal. It's one of those situations right now where the current gaming climate, a lot of developers are on Twitter or other social media platforms. So like right now, like I could go on Twitter, send a tweet out, tag whoever I want to get my message across to, and it will go to them usually, right? Or if not them directly, then someone might see it, pass it on to them, this, that, like it's like a chain. So the I guess the more formal idea would be, professionally written email with like lists and like, here's the list of accessibility features we'd like to see, which yes, like having a formal thing like that would probably be very beneficial. But I'm kind of at the point now where I've been advocating for COD to become more accessible and whatever other games I'm trying to play and get good at be more accessible, but primarily Call of Duty. So where I'm like, hey guys, you guys have done really, really good with Cold War. The only thing you guys are really missing at this point are a means of centering your aim and text to speech for menus. That's literally the only two things I can think of that would make a blind gamer's experience complete with Call of Duty. Because as it is right now, the raw sound design is good enough for me and another blind dude to run huge open world maps with randomly generated dungeons in Call of Duty because they have a new mode for zombies. Basically, it's large open world space.
Yeah, I
And
mean that's one of those things that I find so frustrating, and it's why I've kind of steered away from consoles, just because I get frustrated right at the beginning because I can't even navigate the menus because there's no text to speech feedback. It'll go into the game and then say, oh, text is not supported, inside the game, and that seems like the easiest thing that you could do for somebody is just please read to me what's on the screen with a text reader. I mean,
right.
we have that technology.
So, real quick, I can elaborate on that. So, as far as text to speech goes in games, there's a couple of ways you can do that. One, you can have the actual developers themselves incorporate something, obviously. So, the biggest example is Mortal Kombat 11. NetherRealm Studios got Jameson Price to read the menus to us, which is pretty cool. All you needed was, hey, here's the main menu, here's the fight menu, here's online, or here's practice mode. That's all you really need if you want to play MK a little bit seriously or even casually. All you really need access to is practice mode and to get online. And then you have other games where it doesn't read menus to you, but the workaround is that menus don't wrap around or loop infinitely, so that you can just memorize the menus and count. So, for example, um, like you think like Cold War, um, Black Ops Cold War, the menus don't loop. So all I have to do is I know from the very bottom left, I go to the right, two to the right, that's zombies, two up from that's multiplayer. Then from there I can, go to the bottom and I'm in solo match or whatever. So it's a matter of it's more of a matter of patience if it doesn't have narration. And the cool thing now with PlayStation 5 specifically is they have cards, which I didn't think was a big deal. I was like, cards aren't going to be that useful. And then I noticed that it basically lets you have like text to speech from the home screen of the console. And what I mean is, let's say like so I'm trying to learn King of Fighters 15, which came out in February, March, February, February. Anyway, so I'm trying to learn King of Fighters, right? Menu's not really accessible, but it's audible. You can hear the clicks. You can count. You can do whatever you want to do. The main thing was I want to get the training and I want to get the fights. So how do I do that? Well, there's two ways. One, a friend of mine sat in the share screen or share play feature on PlayStation, and all he had me do was just cycle through the menu a little bit. He texted me a full menu guide for the main menu so I could get to whatever I wanted, and that took us like 2 minutes, like a minute and a half. The other option was me not being lazy and actually looking at the cards on the PlayStation 5 thing. And what it was simply this. I go to King of Fighters, I go down twice to activities. What do I find there? Ranked match, casual match, room match, practice mode. And I can start the activity from my home screen, and it puts me straight into practice. And it's the same for anything that's like PS5 like directly, because like if you try to do that on the PS4 title, like Diablo 3, it doesn't do that because it's like I think it's something tied with the PS5 version of the game, which in itself is like, well, that kind of is unfortunate. But on the flip side, it's basically just letting you have shortcuts to whatever you want as long as it has a card. So like I can go to any like main mode in Guilty Gear or King of Fighters or Call of Duty, or at least the PS5 versions. So like there are workarounds to it. It's just either takes a bit of practice and patience.
So what you're, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're basically saying is on the PlayStation 5 on your home screen where you have the list of all your games, if you go over to whatever game A, you can right from there access some of the menus that are embedded in the game and still be able to, hear the screen reader being read it out to you.
Yeah,
Is that
pretty
kind
much. So what it would be is like if I go hover over, if we had time, I could turn on my PS5 and I could put on the soundbar and show you. But I don't know if we have enough time for that. But what I could do would be, let's say I want to go to I don't know, Guilty Gear Strive. All right, cool. I go down from the Guilty Gear Strive like button, like to start the game,
Mhm.
or boot it up. I go down twice, and it gives me to the activities tab or activities section,
Mhm.
and from there it'll tell me ranked match, casual match, or no, it was yeah, it's a online match. Sorry, online match, story, training, and whatever other thing.
Right.
And instead of trying to memorize the menu, I'll be like, okay, where's training? Right, so I can go into my practice mode and start learning my characters. Instead of just messing with those menus, I can just go click on training and then click X again. It says start activity, and it immediately boosts the game up, puts me right into training mode where I can pick my character from the home screen.
Now,
And it is definitely more convenient. However, I still the menu thing can be tricky. It's just I wish more developers stepped up with it. Like I have tried for a while now to for COD obviously because that's my main franchise I grew up with. I've told them, guys, look, we need more audio feedback of any kind, even if it's not menu narration. At the very bare bones, make it so menus don't loop and we have more sound feedback for what we're actually doing in the menus. And they did that at least, which is
right,
nice.
right.
And I have it on. I have a couple people I talk to where it looks like this isn't 100%, but it looks like they're gonna look at doing a full accessibility team for Treyarch Studios next game because of all the feedback I provided for them for Black Ops 4 and Cold War specifically. Because for Black Ops 4 specifically for zombies, because I wasn't huge into multiplayer at that time for BO4, so I was mostly played zombies and just tried to just get good rounds and see what I could do as a blind person.
Mhm.
And at that time, it was I would post as much as I could on Twitter, on Reddit, whatever social media, my thoughts and feedback on like a brand new map. Okay, what's this map for zombies? Like, is it playable for a blind person? What are the sound design like? What's the locations like? Like a full like map guide for blind people, or like an accessibility guide, basically, as best I could. Okay, and then it went from that to like suggesting feedback and things like that to where eventually um I don't remember what I was doing. I think I was coming home from work and I got a notification from Reddit, which was like not too surprising at the time. Got a notification. I read the notification. It says Treyarch_official has tagged you in a post, and I'm like, wait, what? Why are you guys calling me out? What's going on here? I go look at it, and it's the community manager, and he tagged me and he said, TJ, we hope you and any other blind people find that's helpful. And what they did was they added sound effects for the menus to create a class, so you could actually independently pick your classes and like weapons and gear and whatever you wanted in multiplayer and zombies. Which it wasn't the biggest thing. I mean, in
Yeah,
terms of like,
every little thing helps. So,
yeah, but the thing that shocked me was the fact they called me out on it and
yeah.
like tagged me about it. That was where I was like, wait, really? Like I'm that impactful or like annoying enough, I guess, to where they're trying to call me out on it, which I don't mind because I'm like they did it. Like
Yeah.
Trek was the first company to do it, and then I'm Infinity Ward did some stuff with their Modern Warfare multiplayer, but I wasn't into. I'm not gonna get started on that game. That game is. Mm-mm. And then Cold War rolls around, which is I personally enjoy it. The sound design in that game is really top notch. Um, like enough to where I literally followed a friend's sniper rifle round about 200 or 300 meters to a high value target zombie, so like a bigger boss zombie. Like I literally followed from the time he pulled the trigger and dropped the empty bullet casing to the target he shot. Like that's how detailed the sound design is in that game.
Now,
And
I know you concentrate on the games that we've been mentioning here, but like, have you looked at something like Last of Us Part Two, which has obviously added a lot of accessibility things? Or other games that you have seen that have added good accessibility items? And I guess a follow-up question to that is, if you have someone who's new to the console and blind, what is an easy thing that they can kind of jump into, or maybe the most accessible thing that they can jump into? From my standpoint, 3 years ago, like I said, I lost my vision. Maybe about 8 months after I lost my vision, I picked up my PlayStation for a controller, and I got so frustrated, trying to play Last of Us Part Two, which I had played Last of Us as a sighted person, but Last of Us Part Two, I'm trying to play as a blind person, and I just got too frustrated by it that it was not enjoyable, and it actually just kind of, you know, made me feel bad that I couldn't, you know, play the game and have fun with it. It actually kind of depressed me a little bit. But when people go pick up the PlayStation, they want to be distracted. They want to have fun. What game would you recommend that they can do that from an accessibility standpoint, and maybe not be frustrated, or is it at this point, it's got to be a passion thing. You got to be willing to put in the time and the study, to play the games, kind of like how you've been doing it.
um, that one's a little bit loaded actually because from my perspective, it's accessibility settings and features, like menu narration and things like that. They are great and they are crucial, but I'm more focused towards accessibility doesn't mean anything to me if I can't find enjoyment in the game.
Mhm.
Like that's my perspective at least, and I might be in the minority on that one, but it's like Diablo 3, the main thing that's missing from that for a blind person is text to speech, but I still enjoy the game enough to where I'm like, I don't care. Like I can find ways around not having gear like being read out loud, like from text to speech. And I think gaming in general largely is a passion, but it's getting more to the point where a lot of devs are noticing that there are blind people out there, right? So we have Last of Us Part Two as like the game of the year, accessible game of the year for 2020 or whenever it came out,
Mhm.
which is cool. That's great. However, I am the kind of person where single player games are not my thing. Like I can enjoy a good story and I can enjoy it, but I will not go out of my way to play single player all that much because I enjoy having like a community to play with and friends to play with and like that level of competition. Like, I just beat you in this fighting game or we're running a crew in Diablo 3. Like, like I like that aspect to it. So like, and this is my thing, but as far as like a beginner game, like you're that is tricky because we all know that visual impairment is a spectrum. So on one end, it's like just below 20/20. The other end is like you're not seeing anything at all, and it can be a tricky thing to where I'm like, hey, I mean, here's what other blind people are doing, here's what I'm doing, like here's what we're all generally doing. Like I don't know how like what else to tell you, because at that point it really is a matter of, if you want to play these games, you got to put at least a tiny bit of effort in.
Mhm.
And this it's not even just like the blind thing either. Like even sighted people struggle with some games too. Like I know some sighted people who struggle with Mortal Kombat or Diablo or COD, which those are my main three games I can talk about because of the ones I play the most. Like I've even met some people who have no disabilities, but even they're like struggling with this game or that game, this game, that game. And it's like a lot of it, I think at this point is passion. But I think pound for pound out of the games I know of, because of Last of Us Part Two's accessibility, I think that might honestly be the game to introduce a blind person to. Like if they've never played a console game before, excuse me again, sorry. If they've never played a console game before, Last of Us Part Two might be your best bet, just because they do. Well, last time I tried it, they explained things pretty good to understand like how your movement works, your aiming, your camera. They had the text to speech. They had like so much to that game, so it might get your foot in the door. Get your feet a little wet to where you might maybe have the itch to jump to something else. You know what I mean? Like it's, excuse me, sorry again. Um, I don't, like I said, that one's tricky because it, like it, you have to consider the visual aspect, because like some games, even if you have a bit of vision, you might be able to see something because they have magnifiers, they have other like visual settings and accessibility in game and on the console. So like there's different things to look for there. But then like there's also the willingness. Like for some, like for me, I'm willing to just play any game. If I enjoy it, I'll stick with it, regardless of accessibility or not. Like that's just how I am at this point. So like I'm trying to think of a game I recently tried. Like let's say like King of Fighters, right? King of Fighters is the newest fighting game I'm trying to learn. That game has like no menu narration, the menus loop, and it can be frustrating. But I'm okay with it because I just genuinely enjoy fighting games enough to where I'm like, I will play this. The biggest detriment for me isn't accessibility. It's the fact that I don't speak Japanese and I can't relate to my characters I'm playing because I don't know what the heck they're saying. That's what bugging me about it. Um, and that's more of a personal thing. That's not really about the accessibility necessarily, but um, I don't know. Like I said, it's that one's tricky to
Well,
quantify an answer.
TJ, why don't we tell some people as well? I mean, you have a YouTube page where you have a whole bunch of videos that is you playing games as a blind person. I believe some of them are kind of like almost tutorials of how to navigate games as a blind person. So, why don't you just tell the community, if they go to your YouTube page, what will they find? What kind of content?
Okay. As across my YouTube and just my social presence in general, it's revolving around a lot of. At this point, it's a lot of just me uploading gameplay, like me like having commentary over the gameplay, talking about what I'm doing, or what the opponent's doing, or whatever games, or um, just chilling in a party with friends, and we're all just shooting the crap, right? We're all just talking about whatever, Marvel, Star Wars, DC, whatever, and a lot of it revolves around, like I mentioned, gameplay, and just trying to have a chill environment for people to come in and enjoy the game. If they have questions, they can come in and ask them. And occasionally I'll pull out a video where I'm like doing a tutorial for a menu, or a beginner's guide for this character in this game, or like how does a blind person aim in Call of Duty. Like I'll do different tech or training or tutorial based videos. There, but that's the word I was looking for. Tutorial. Um, like I'll do those occasionally, but it's more so not a lot of people have the interest to have me just do tutorials for everything, and more of it is like I just enjoy just playing more. And I will go out of my way to help people if they ask. It's just it's one of those things where I just play right now. Right now, a lot of my content is just playing, with not much of a goal in mind. Like I don't have Like I'm not here doing this like, oh, get money off YouTube and Twitch and this and that. It's more of a, I just play and upload what I can, and people enjoy it. People enjoy it. If it helps grow the community of blind people playing video games, then that's great. If not, then I'm still having fun with these games.
What has been your favorite accessible gaming experience that you've had?
Um, on like on one hand, I want to say Last of Us 2 because of the impact that game had in terms of accessibility. But on the other hand, I've had a lot of fun surprisingly with Diablo. Again, like my field of gaming is pretty narrow in the grand scheme of things.
Hmm.
That's just because I found what I liked, and that's what I do. But as far as like it surprised me that I could play it as well as I could was Diablo. Because I figured a fighting game wouldn't be too hard. 2D or 3D, anime or whatever genre fighting game you're going with, generally a blind person can do it if the sound is good enough. COD, I figured I might be able to do something because I played those games for like 7 or 8 years before I went blind. And then like I didn't let that stop me. Right? But then Diablo, like I had very little experience with Diablo or any action RPG for that matter. I did play like Boulder's Gate, Dark Alliance, and Champions of Norath way on PS2. But up until then, I didn't think a blind person could run Diablo.
Did you play
Then all of a
Boulder's
sudden,
Gate as a blind person?
huh?
Did you play Boulder's Gate as a blind person?
No, no,
Or
no, no. I
oh,
had vision during the PS2 era.
okay.
I actually considered picking up because they remastered that
Yes.
last year, didn't they?
Yes.
I
A
considered
couple
grabbing
years
it,
ago.
but I don't know. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, I think they did it right before I lost my sight because I had just gotten the game and started playing it, and then I lost my sight. So, because that's a longtime favorite of mine from many years ago, the original Baldur's Gate. You know,
Yeah,
love that
that
game.
I was gonna say that makes me. I'm not even that old, but that makes me feel old. like it's crazy. Time flies, dude. I'm sitting here. I have 2 kids and a job, and it's like only like 10 years ago I was sitting in my room after school, just you know finish my homework or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah,
and then
it's going to go quicker. Trust me.
oh yeah,
Every
I'm sure it will.
decade, the last decade has gone faster than the decade before. You know what I mean? From 10 to 20, it feels like an eternity. From 20 to 30, it's a little faster. From 30 to 40, it goes in a blink.
Yeah.
Um, what about on the flip side of that? What about what game do you wish that you could play that you're frustrated that there isn't accessibility? Like this game should be accessible and I should be able to play this, but it's just I can't for whatever reason. It's frustrating. Do you have any of that kind of experience?
Oh yeah. I got an easy example for you, and it's not just one game. It's like a whole genre of games.
Okay.
Those are RPGs because aside from COD, the main games I remember playing a lot were Dragon Age Origins
Mhm.
and
Great game.
Knights of the Old Republic. Right, so
Another
you're
big game.
talking like OG D&D style games at that point, like KOTOR and Dragon Age. Like I said, the original, not Dragon Age 2, not Inquisition, like Origins, the first one,
Yeah.
right?
See,
So
those feel like they would be potential because you're not really open world. You're more like on a path. You can't veer too far to the left or the right. It's
yeah, like
it's
I could see the potential for it, especially if developers went out of the way to put accessibility in. But regardless of the devs doing things officially,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's mods or something you could do. The thing for me was this: is I don't see a huge thing. Sorry, my initial thought when I tried playing Dragon Age Origins, right? My brother has an Xbox, and I tried doing backwards compatibility, and the sound design wasn't too bad. I actually got through a couple fights. I got through some dialogue, but the problem was there's just so much text on screen because you
all your
have
choices.
huh?
You have all your choices of dialogue choices and
Yeah,
things like
like
that.
dialogue, gear, skills, and then like what's what one was it? I think it was like left bumper or L1 depending on your console, and it would like pull up your like wheel like for
Right.
tactics and like all these other things.
Right.
Like So there's so much more text than something like Diablo. And to be honest, it's harder than Diablo, like combat wise. Like that kind of combat is like not easy. Like you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And my thought process was like if we ever got a Dragon Age remaster or KOTOR remake, which they're doing, and I hope they have accessibility. I'm really doubting it though. Um,
Oh, you got to start, sending those
thought
tweets
about
out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You got to start
probably.
bothering them every day. Keep
But
tweeting at them.
guys, do these things.
Yeah.
No, so the initial thought is like, we'll do text to speech for for the game. It's like that's the obvious one. But one thing I was thinking was, sure, text to speech would be great, and that'd be amazing. But you could springboard off that. My thought process was this: on, if I remember correctly, on console, on Dragon Age and KOTOR, what you could do is you had your L1 or whatever it was, where it pulled the wheel, and that was also a cursor, like a cursor wheel thing, all in one. So you could like target things and like do your combat tactics, whatever you're doing. But if I remember, if you tapped it, like you tapped your L1 and R1, like you would cycle through whatever options there were without having to aim. So my thought process was this: um, you can move freely if you wanted, and you could maybe have your right stick have a sound to indicate which direction you need to go. But what it would do is, if you're like tapping your L1 or R1 to like kind of, and it would like kind of OCR whatever text you're finding, or like a character's name. So you can do, if it said like Liliana, and then you would hit X or whatever, then you obviously go talk to Liliana. Or if R1 a bit more, it's like, oh, uh, what's the enemy type, Darkspawn Elite or whatever. It's like it would like verbally convey like what you're targeting, so you know what you're interacting with, or who you're interacting with or killing
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
But also you have the objective sound indicate. Like that to me doesn't sound that complicated. It would probably still not be completely accessible, but it'd be more than what it really is right now. And of course, the assumption with this potential remake is just better sound design in general, because they're remaking the thing. So
Well, I wonder too, was just while you were kind of explaining that, something like KOTOR, which is, y- you know, the spaces are not too open. They have kind of defined space that, as you said, if you could be pointing a direction, tap a button, and it would announce, like if you're looking at a chair, it would say chair or it would say door, so you'd have some tags around the space that could help you orientate, which way you're looking, or, I'm looking for a door. Oh, I'll look around, keep tapping it until I find where the door is. So I know which direction I'm supposed to walk to get to the next door. That might be a nice, way to help a blind person navigate the space, to give them kind of auditory cues of what they're looking at.
yeah, that's one thing that I think Last of Us 2 did that, where what they did, it wasn't like describing the environment around them. The text to speech did do that, I think, a bit. But the main thing they did in that game was, I think you clicked your left stick or right stick, and it would ping the direction you need to go,
Right.
but also would center your aim, like so you can just walk straight for it,
Right. Yeah.
which is fine.
Exactly.
Which accessibility wise, it makes sense. I enjoy that, but I'm also the kind of guy who I'm like, like, if I'm interested enough, I'll figure it out myself. But it gets to the point where I'm like, there's so much accessibility. I feel like I'm not really doing
Playing the
anything.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Which like I'm gonna jump back on Cold War again, because examples. They have a ping mechanic in that game, like Apex Legends, or I can't think of anything else besides Apex right now. Actually, that has a ping. But basically, what it does is you hit left on the D-pad, and your operator you play as, like your character you pick, they'll call out what they see. So if you're looking at the floor, they'll say something generic like marking location, right? You're just something simple. And your team can see what you pinged, which, might get you some like, some jabs at you, like, what are you pinging the floor for?
Right.
Something silly. But the main thing that happens with it is it changes sound. Like the ping, or the ping marker will change sounds depending on what you're pinging, and your character will say what they're looking at if it's unique from like just a random map environment, like the floor, the wall, or door, whatever. They'll tell you enemy located, assault rifle on the ground. They'll tell you objective marked. They'll tell you special enemy. Like like your character will tell you what you're looking at, what you're looking for. They'll
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you,
So that sounds similar to what I was describing.
yeah. The only difference being is like you kind of have to look at the general direction of what you want to try and ping. And if you miss the ping, if you miss the object you're looking at, or you want to figure out what it is, you might take you a second to find it. But once you do, they'll tell you, frag on the ground, go pick it up, whatever.
Right.
Like it actually is, it actually has a lot of detail to it. The only thing that the ping doesn't tell you what it is certain drops and zombies. But aside from that, it tells you everything. Like I can ping one thing, and all I have to do from there is like shoot a bullet or two for another blind dude to come listen for my shots and come stand where I'm standing, pick up the armor or whatever, and we're good to go.
Now, the various games that you've mentioned that you've played, are you getting some pre-knowledge that they are accessible enough to give it a shot, or are you just picking it up and say, hey, let me just give this a try and I'll see if it is accessible or not accessible? How do you approach the games you decide to pick up and start playing?
A lot of my decisions comes down to like my just personal interest. Like I mentioned before, at this point with like I kind of have other priorities, right? I have kids, I have a job, so like accessibility isn't like my main thing anymore. It's cool when it happens, but it's more like, do I enjoy this kind of game? Am I interested in the game? Okay, cool. Let me figure out what I can. Oh, let me check the accessibility. Do they have accessibility in this game? Like, is there anything in here for us? And then if there is stuff, cool. If there isn't, cool. I'll just play it and have fun if I can. If not, then no harm, no foul. Like the only problem with that is like your wallet can really feel it. But eventually, it's like I, I kind of understand what I enjoy in gaming and what I want to get out of it, which for me is right now at this point is a lot of competition. Like I'm trying to you know do fighting game stuff, tournaments, stuff like that. But like okay, I can give you an example right now actually. So this game came out, I think in 2017, maybe 2018. I don't remember exactly what year, but it was a game called Perception. The idea is you play as a blind girl in some haunted mansion. Like it's supposed to be a horror game. Okay, it actually was surprising because they actually like one of the mechanics you can do in the game is pull up your smartphone, and they have like talkback or voiceover equivalent basically for her phone, which is kind of cool. I'm like, that's a nice detail. And then like your R2 button would tap her cane, and like you like it still is a visual game. So like when you tap her cane, you're gonna see stuff, but it's like because they have to represent something visually because it's not an audio game by itself. But it was an interesting concept. But like accessibility and all the stuff they did, I was like, I don't care because like I'm not into the horror games, let alone single player. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't in my interest then,
Not
and
your
it's
type of game.
not now. Sorry, go on.
No, as I said, it's not your preferred type of game.
No, for me, like I said earlier, it's I just like I'm at the point now where it's like I'll just jump on and play whatever with a group of people, and we all just chill and we all just hang out and just have fun.
Now, do you concentrate mostly on the PlayStation, or you do PlayStation, Xbox, computer? Are you all over the place? What platform do
So
you like?
for so for me, I primarily stick on PlayStation just because that's what I've always been my whole life.
Mhm.
I did dabble with the Xbox a bit here and there, but it's not my favorite thing. My problem with the Xbox is that I don't like the controllers. Like my right hand has a fairly fairly large disability. Not terrible by any means, but it definitely can be a hassle. And those controllers are not suited for someone with a disability like my hand. And so the PlayStation side has always been more comfortable, and that's just what I've always ran with. Um, I did do a fair amount of light PC gaming because Knights of the Old Republic and the original Halo were on PC, so I did that. But that's about it. Like I've never got into PC gaming. I understand people enjoy it because the mods offer freedom and accessibility. This that. My thing is I'm not gonna put money in a PC just for the parts to become not so optimal, a year or two down the road. maybe 3 or 4 years, whatever.
Right.
And then by that point, it's like, okay, well, I just dumped this in this PC that I spend more money on to keep upgrading, and maybe not even play it all that much because the crowd, the community, isn't really there as far as like meeting other blind people and training and teaching and getting them introduced to consoles and or games in general. The communities on console are just bigger, and yeah, I actually not sure where I'm going with that. Like that was a whole thing.
Have
Like
you
it just died off.
have you you know that speaking of that community on the console, have you do you have a whole group of people that you now know who are blind gamers on the console, that you talk to regularly, or are you just kind of an island on your own doing your own thing?
No, we got a whole community. In fact, so that's actually kind of interesting right now. So what we've done recently. So obviously, I was known as the primary blind Call of Duty guy, right?
Mhm.
That's who I was. Kind of not so much now, just because I'm focusing on other things. But the community aspect of it, we actually have a blind gamers hub, blind gamers community for Discord actually, because what we did was we grouped together because we have, at the time Mortal Kombat 11 came out, people who are blind were hearing about, wait, this fighting game has accessibility in it, like it has sound feedback for interactables, it has sound feedback for menus, like all these things. And I want to get in on this, and so eventually got to the point where we had enough people in our blind gamers community. We ran, my knowledge is limited here, so I may be wrong, but to my knowledge, we ran the first ever all blind visually impaired tournament in fighting game history.
Nice. How many people participated?
If I remember correctly, we were up to like somewhere between 10 and 20 people like fighting and participating. But the guys who ran it, the whole team behind it ran it and commentated on the fights and everything, they were all blind too.
Yeah.
So everybody involved was blind or visually impaired to some capacity. There's one dude I remember who was sighted who helped, but he was mostly helping just organize the bracket for the tournament. That was about it, if I remember right.
Yeah. Was there prize money in that, or is it just bragging
It
rights?
was a Xbox, whatever the new Xbox was at the time,
Oh, wow.
full brand new everything.
Excellent. How well did you do?
Oh no, at the time, no, no, we're good. We don't. I'm kidding. No, at the time I didn't do that good just because I at the time I was still new to understanding fighting games,
Right.
and so like I wasn't really good at that time. And then the second year we did the Sento Showdown, which is what we called it because we named it after Kenshi from Mortal Kombat, who's a blind swordsman.
Okay.
His sword's name is Sento, so we just went Sento Showdown, like
Okay.
blind character. Anyway, with that connection. I didn't do the second year of the Sentinel Showdown, unfortunately, because I didn't have time. I didn't have an Xbox because we ran it on the Xbox originally, or they did. Because I wasn't part of the team, but I forced to have it saying the word we.
Mhm.
But they ran on the Xbox originally, but now we're at the point now where we're putting PlayStation events on the map a bit more, because now the PS5 is on par, or even some say better than Xbox for accessibility. It just depends on who you ask.
Nice. Um, so, what do if you had advice for, other gamers who are out there who want to be playing accessible games, I mean, what can they do to ensure that there's more accessible games out there for them to play?
The one thing I'll say about that is if you find a game that you enjoy, I would just recommend just if you enjoy it, put yourself out there if you can. If you're comfortable with it, put yourself out there. The more the devs see the demand for accessibility, the more they'll do it. Right? They're not gonna put the effort in if there's nobody wanting to put the effort into their game, right? To actually play it and get good or complete or whatever the goal for the game is,
Metric.
depending on the game. Like like for example, I worked from 2015 till about 2019 just to get some sounds for some menus in Call of Duty, and I was just like pretty much the only guy really doing that. Whereas, like for the fighting game genre specifically, NetherRealm Studios, they listened to Rattlehead for Mortal Kombat 9. Like he talked to some of the devs at Evo, like Evolution, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. He talked to some of the devs there, and next thing you know, the next game they drop, boom, has accessibility, like has more accessibility stuff, because people put themselves out there. They like you got to think about it. These developers, they design their game. They don't think about blind people or deaf people or any disabled groups. All of a sudden, you're at the world's largest fighting game tournament with some of the biggest prize potential in fighting game history, to my knowledge. Maybe I'm wrong. With Capcom Cup is a different story. And all of a sudden, you see a blind dude going toe to toe with professionals, like professional players who like win world championships. Like that's gonna get attention. And then it's like, oh wait. There's a legitimate blind gamer scene. What are you talking about? Then boom, MK11 drops, menu narration, sound feedback for this and that. And then it's like, wait, we have a whole community of blind people. NetherRealm Studios themselves, if I remember right, they put our tournament up on their main Twitch page. Like they hosted what we were doing when it happened, because of like, wow, this is like a thing, like that's happening. And then like for COD specifically, like I said, I was probably the only one really doing anything with it. And it got to the point where they contacted me about like, hey, we're doing this and that. It's like, all right, cool. What's the new patch? What are you guys doing? Then I would tell the blind people about what they've done for COD. And like I'd pass on whatever info whatever I had from feedback from other blind people who tried it. And eventually it either got patched in, or they would, they let me know, like, look, we have it on the back burner, like we have it like as a suggestion for later ideas. So we hear you, like we understand what you're asking for. It's like, if you don't communicate and don't put yourself out there, they're not going to do anything. They won't like care enough, because it's an investment. It's all about making money. Like Last of Us 2. Okay. Nobody, or not, no, sorry, I need to rephrase that. I know a good amount of blind people, not even gamers, right? People who are not gamers at all, who went out and just bought a console just for Last of Us 2.
Sure.
Because they heard about the accessibility.
Right.
And that's the same idea for like, it's all an investment. It's all about, I found a game, I like it, doesn't have a lot of accessibility. Are the devs supporting and patching it? Okay, let me reach out to them, contact them, see what they think. Like friend of mine, he picked up what's the new Borderlands thing?
Tiny Tina's, Tiny Tina's Wonderland or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, he's sighted. He bought the game and he reached out to the company about, hey, look, like we have blind people who want to try your game, but you guys don't have a whole lot. Like they have some accessibility stuff, which is cool, but not a lot. So he reached out like on behalf of the BFGC basically. And
Yeah, we almost need like a political action committee, to go and en masse. We represent 10,000 blind gamers. Put this in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that'd be great, but it's more of a thing of like how many blind people are playing games. You know what I mean? Like it's like a demand. What's the market versus demand or whatever? Like it's
Right.
basic economics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many are scared off or just don't think it's possible or don't know new accessibility thing? How many people are blind and unaware that Last of Us Part 2 has made a game that is really made some stretches in making a game accessible for them, or what's that one on the Xbox, The Veil, which is all auditory, so you should be able to play that as a blind person as well. Probably some of it's awareness on both sides. I don't play games because I'm blind. How could I possibly play a game? Well, there are accessibility
for blind
things.
people, because blind people don't play. It's a proverbial loop of miscommunication or just like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's like a continuous loop of miscommunication, like people not understanding like how many games there are that are like not even accessible, but just purely playable. Because that's the distinction as well, as like you might have Last of Us 2, which is immensely accessible. Like we can't, like no one can argue that. But like as far as like playability, that's a different topic, because then it's like there's like very little accessibility for the game, but you can bet that blind people are going to find a way to play it. Like right now, I know like there's like at least like 5 or 6 or maybe a couple more blind people who run Halo Infinite matches. like at least once or twice a week. They run a lobby of blind people in Halo, and I'm like, you guys are. I gotta give y'all props for that one, because
Hardcore, right?
and that's what I'm saying is like when you have enough interest, it turns into like, okay, the devs might actually take notice, and then it it's one of those things where if you have a community of people talking about it, they're gonna probably see it. But if you have like a community of people who put in the effort to like put their name on the map, like, hey, wait a minute, these blind people did such and such action, like in a tournament or like whatever they're doing. It's like, wait a minute. So we have a community of people who are playing at a higher level or whatever it may be. Then it's like a lot more interesting. Like, oh, wait a minute, we can maybe expand into this. Dollar signs, dollar signs. Like,
Right.
like
Well,
like I mentioned earlier with the Tiny Tina's thing, they got back to my friend about the accessibility, and he called him out, or not called him out, but like he explained like we have blind people who come from fighting game backgrounds, shooter backgrounds, like all these different backgrounds. Like we can offer feedback and suggestions or whatever for you guys to make your game more accessible. And they did the PR response of like, oh, we'll get back to you, like, but that
well,
the fact that they respond, the fact that they took the time to actually respond, even if it is more PR like speak or wording or whatever, they did it. So it's like at least it's something. I
well,
personally probably would Twitter because it's just easier.
I have found in running my group, which covers accessible games, that we don't just like text adventure games. Everyone's like, oh well, blind people like text adventure games. Well, yeah, sure, they like those because historically those have been the only thing that's really been kind of accessible to us. But as other developers have made other types of games accessible, we're as diverse as any community of gamers out there, and we like lots of different types of things. Some people like text adventures, some like words, some like RPGs, fighters, shooters, the whole gambit. So the field or the ocean is available to us as long as they make it accessible. That we're interested in all types of games.
Yeah.
We've been kind of pigeonholed for many years, but it's starting to open up more and more. And I think the more it opens up, the more blind gamers will explore different types of games, because we do like different types of games and experiences.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you look at the sorry, I'm like repositioning myself. Um, when you look at the history of blind gaming in general, it is largely text adventure, and then you start to get into more modern era of smartphones. You start to see a lot of audio only games, blindfold bowling, like
All right.
that type of game,
Yeah.
which is fine, for like your first game. Like it's like, okay, that's cool. And then when you try and jump to the console or PC crowd, it's like, whoa, what is this, right?
Yeah.
Because an audio only game like Blind Legend or Blind Bowling, like those don't really accurately reflect like a video game, right? Because
Right.
like Mortal Kombat, right? I'm trying to teach this blind dude, this other, and he's newer in terms of like gaming, because like he's all he's ever done is audio only, right? It's like blindfold bowling, I guess. And like just getting to understand like the concept of left and of like swapping sides
Right.
in a fighting game,
Right.
and like how that changes the directional input for like a combo or something. Like that right there is like an interesting challenge to overcome. Like as far as like a teacher, and just trying to put my mindset into it of like I'm blind. I'm trying to jump into this kind of game. It's like I can that just sounds complicated. Like even for an easy like not even easy, even for a simpler game like Diablo. Diablo's fairly simple when you start out. It gets a lot more complex later. But like even just simply running around and like trying to just simply kill the demons or whatever around you. Like to some people that may be hard for them as well. Like it just greatly depends on like sound design, accessibility, things like that.
Right.
But then you have other avenues of like the Spider-Man games from Insomniac apparently have a lot of accessibility in them for blind people. I don't know. I can't speak to that personally because I haven't really played those games. But I do know, was it two blind people or one blind person who platinumed one of those games? Meaning like got all the trophies or achievements or whatever. Like they got all of them, I think. But it's definitely interesting when you think about the history of it. And as far as like the majority of like the mainstream side of blind gaming, a lot of our history is wrapped up in fighting games, right? So like generally from what I've seen, where blind gaming, like more mainstream blind gamers started coming out was 2012 with Evo for Rattlehead for Mortal Kombat 9, and Blind Warrior Sven I think came out around the same time for Street Fighter. I may be wrong on that one, actually. I don't know too much about Street Fighter's history.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, my understanding, like I was saying at the top of this interview, that those are, each punch and kick and special has its own unique sound,
oh yeah,
that really kind of conveys, what the other player is doing, and then if you hear that sound, what you're supposed to do as a counter to that particular type of attack. And it's been kind of explained as kind of a rhythm game of flow, of listening to the sound, responding, countering, and then seeing if they respond. The thing that I always thought was interesting on that was the point that you brought up, is when you end up, someone jumps over you and now they're on the other side of you, of quickly being aware that dynamic has changed. That now they're you know on your right hand side, not your left hand side. I imagine that's probably a little tricky to get used to at the start.
yeah. And like I said, this the a lot of my perspective is like I've been playing games with no vision at all for like 6 or 7 years now,
Mhm.
maybe. So like I like, to me, like all this is like nothing. Like it's all, I'm used to it. Like I'll just pick up and play and just see how it goes. And if I can, I'll get good at it. If not, whatever, no harm, no foul. But then it's like, other people, it's like, dude, I've never touched a video game in my life. I'm like, oh, I guess we'll try this. I don't know how this is gonna go, but I guess we'll go for it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely interesting. When you sit and think about it for a minute.
I think, probably, having some visual history of it has also made it easier for you to conceptualize than someone maybe who's been blind their whole life, trying to figure out conceptually what are you even talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably it as well. I think at this point, there's I don't know, man. I'm so used to being blind that I don't even think about my like vision, like visual history anymore. Like that's like, I think I'm so used to it at this point.
Yeah, mine is recent enough in the past, and obviously, like I said, 40 some odd years of visual experience. So I still picture everything. As I sit here right now talking to you, I have a mental projection of the desk, of the computer, of the keyboard, of the door, of the window. Like I don't see any of it, but I have kind of almost a picture in my head of where everything is. Down to as much detail as I can remember. So that's how I kind
Yeah.
of think of everything right now. Um, so just as we kind of wrap up, our discussion, do you have, well, first, with your YouTube page, what are you working on now? What if someone clues into your YouTube page, what's kind of going to be the next video that they see?
Um, at this point, generally, what I'm focusing on is I'm trying to expand what I bring to my content. Or, sorry, that's like the wrong way to word that. I'm trying to expand my content in terms of I mostly run Mortal Kombat and Diablo at this point,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to expand that to other games if I can. So primarily fighting games because that's what I'm enjoying a lot right now.
Mhm.
It's like Guilty Gear and King of Fighters and stuff like that. But um, like as of like today, I'd probably tell you the next thing you're gonna see if you look at YouTube or Twitch or whatever I'm doing, it's gonna be Diablo because the season starts tomorrow,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna try and grind that and like do some stuff with the leaderboards and season stuff. Um, just because that actually is like incentive for me to play that game when
Sure.
the season starts.
Right.
Um, aside from that, I was considering. I've been considering doing like trying to describe how fighting games work, like for brand new players, like to better understand how a 2D fighter works. That's what I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with 3D fighters. 3D fighters is a whole different
Right.
ballgame. So I've been considering doing that as well.
And then, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or comments for the blind community game members who are going to be listening to this interview about the future of gaming, the future accessibility, about any advice for them about playing games, and just kind of any final words?
Mm, all I can really think to say is if you have any interest at all in gaming, I'd suggest go for it. It doesn't matter what console or PC you do, just pick it up and try it. Just go in expecting it's not going to be exactly easy, but what you can do is you can reach out to the people and communities, and you can get assistance and get help learning how things work, or you can find friends to play with and they can help you. There's a larger community out there, and everybody starts at square one. Everybody starts not understanding what they're doing, and it's just a matter of once you find what you like, if you like it enough, you'll get good at it and you'll be able to do fine with it. And then that level of interest, if you want to help make games more accessible, you can start at least this is what worked for me, was just do what you can content wise, and have it is a bit clickbaity, but like blind gamer does this and this and this game or whatever, right? And like you have that, and then the devs might see that, and then they are considering accessibility. Like that's how, to my knowledge, that's how like Super Blind Man and a couple other guys who helped, like Naughty Dog Studios, they brought in deaf and blind people from the accessible gaming community to work on those games.
Right.
That's why there's so much accessibility in that game for Last of Us 2.
Right, and
So,
started from the very beginning of the game, considering accessibility. So
yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But what I mean is like, just try it. Give gaming a shot. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Like that's all I can really say about it. Like I try my best to help teach whoever I can about the games I know and the games I'm interested in. And there's other people who are interested in Gears of War or Halo or I can't think of other games right now. There's a whole bunch of other stuff out there besides just shooters and fighting games. Like there is like text adventures if you want that. There is a RPG, like there's RPG stuff. There's roguelite. There's a whole bunch of different genres out there you can do. So if anybody's interested, go for it, and do what you can to contact developers about accessibility and provide what feedback you can. Right. As far as like the future goes for accessibility, it's looking bright. At least from what I've seen, it's looking pretty bright. Like I feel like a lot of devs are listening, and like for example, God of War Ragnarok, I'm hoping has a lot of accessibility in it, because God of War 4, the 2019, that one had actually a fair amount of accessibility in it. Not crazy good by any means, but it was fun. It was good enough. Like I played it for a bit here and there, but I never got through the whole thing. But I'm looking forward to a lot of games. I'm hoping a lot of games have accessibility because of the push from like Last of Us 2, MK11, a bunch of other accessible.
Right. More in the foreground now of people's, the mindset.
Yeah. Like people actually thinking about, oh, wait a minute, blind people play this game, or deaf people play this game, or there's enough interest of a blind community or deaf community in our games. Like we're gonna actually look at accessibility. Like I mentioned earlier with Call of Duty, like the Treyarch dev team are thinking of doing accessibility for their next game, because I don't know, maybe because I just spam them enough, it looks like there's a lot of people interested. Maybe. But yeah, like they're considering it too. And keep in mind, it's coming from people who are under Activision, so you would think Activision says no, but they're doing it. And that actually reminds me, Blizzard came out, or like some people at Blizzard came out and said they're looking at accessibility stuff for Diablo 4 as well. So
nice.
I don't know about Diablo. They said that for Diablo 2, but didn't really follow up on that, which I wasn't too upset about, just because I can understand the value of Diablo 2, and I can understand why people enjoy the game so much. But man, I'll stick with Diablo 3, dude. That's my thing.
Well, excellent. TJ, I really appreciate you, taking the time and telling us about your history and your efforts and, all the hard work that you put into, learning how to game, and concentrating on the sound, really kind of is inspiring what you've been able to accomplish. I know 3 years ago you had 10,000 kills in Call of Duty. What was the final number? Do you even know?
I don't remember for that particular game. So for that, I think for World War II, I finished that multiplayer like a year more or less because every year a new COD comes out, right? So I think I finished it off somewhere around 13 or 12 or somewhere around 13,000 if I remember right. A massive amount of deaths compared to my kills, but the fact I did it
Yeah,
against real players in real matches, not like computer, not bots, not on. I just did it all in real matches on almost every map in the game. Like that shows like the kind of detail you can really come to listen for in certain titles.
right. Well, excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. If you have any, content you want to share with us, feel free to join our Facebook group and, post any updates that you have. We're always interested to hear about your accomplishments.
I appreciate you wanting to speak with me on this topic. Like I said, I take great pride in trying to help other people learn about accessible games, and if they can, if I can help them get into it, then I can help them get into it, and we can grow the community more. The more people interested, the more we can have more, just more enjoyable experiences with games, and more, hopefully, more accessible experiences, because developers see that that there's interested parties.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much and have a great night.
You as well.